Hi everyone, Vince with Boomer Electronics here. Hope you're all having a nice day. In a previous video, I went over repairing a Sega Nomad that had an issue with its Z80 processor. Uh, I've been doing some more testing with this Nomad and I have come into another problem with it. Unfortunately, it looks like the backlight's starting to die in it. Sometimes I would power it on and it would take several seconds before the screen would illuminate. Other times I'd power it on and for whatever reason the light would just be really dim and hard to see the screen. So I figured this would be a good one to do an LED backlight modification. There are also other benefits besides just replacing a dying bulb that you may want to consider when doing this modification. First and foremost, if you do run one of these things on batteries, you're going to notice improved battery life. Another thing I noticed pretty quickly was these run much cooler if you don't have those old CFL tube bulbs in them. I can run this for quite a while now and it'll still be nice and cool in my hands, whereas if I ran it before with the bulb in it, it would heat up really quickly and this would be pretty toasty in my hands. So these are other benefits you might want to consider when doing this mod. Also, it's a very cheap modification. Basically, you just require two LED bulbs, a resistor, and some wires. I mean, probably under $1 worth of materials, quite honestly. If you want this modification done, but you're not interested in doing it yourself, I'll have a link to my website you can check out, and you can purchase my service there, send me your Nomad, and I'll just get it taken care of for you. So, with all that out of the way, let's get into the mod. These are the materials you're going to need for this mod. You're going to need two white LEDs that are 3mm, a 47 ohm resistor, and links are to the description for these parts that I used. First, I'm going to go ahead and show you how to open up a Nomad, just in case you need any help with this. You're going to need a Phillips head screwdriver that has a fairly long shaft. You're also going to need a 4.5mm game bit that also has a pretty long shaft. The game bit screw is at the bottom center of the shell here. After you've removed all the screws, set them to the side, and you're going to want to gingerly open up the shell here. There's a white ribbon cable connecting the two halves together. You don't want to damage that. There's a couple locking tabs you can just separate here, and then this cable will pull right out. Set this half of the shell to the side. There are three small Phillips head screws towards three of the edges here that we're going to remove. And before we can remove this board from this half of the shell, there are two cables we're going to have to disconnect as well. This one right here, and this one over here for the speaker. For whatever reason, this one's really tight in this Nomad. I actually use a flathead to help pry this loose. You may not have to do this. And after you've removed those, you can go ahead and just pop this board out of the shell. Then go ahead and set this half of the shell to the side. At this point, we're going to want to remove this metal bracket from the screen here. As you can see, the metal bracket's held in place by these tabs on the white plastic. I'm just using a flathead to pry these up. Once you pry these ones up on this side, this just kind of comes off pretty easily. Now the LCD is separated from the white plastic here. We can now go ahead and remove the 4 Phillips head screws that are holding this white plastic onto the board. You're going to want to disconnect this cable here. This is the cable that connects the backlight to the board here. Now this white plastic should pop off. You may have to wiggle it around a little bit like I am right here, but it should come off without too much issue. Alright, great. And this is the piece that we're going to need to modify. So we're going to take this with us into the workshop. I'm going to go ahead and remove this little board from this white plastic diffuser here. So here I'm removing the wires that are connecting the bulb to this board, just so it's easier to work with. Okay, so on this light diffuser here, there's this white plastic piece, and there are 2 small Phillips head screws holding it in place. So with a small Phillips head screwdriver, I'm just removing these screws. And then we're going to get this white plastic piece out of the way. We're working towards getting down to the bulb and removing it. That's what we're working towards. So there's a white strip here that's held down with some adhesive. It was pretty hard to remove, so I actually have my hot air station set to 100 degrees Celsius to help with this process. And I'm just using a pair of tweezers to slowly peel it back. It takes a little while, but you know, it's good to be patient with this. Now that that is up, we have access to the tube bulb. We can go ahead and pop it out of the diffuser here and remove it and set it to the side. Now I'm going to go ahead and wire the cathode leg of the LEDs. I'm just doing the cathode here. I'm showing a picture showing which one is the cathode. It's the one where if you look at the LED itself, there's the bigger piece of metal in it. That is the cathode, or the negative leg, however you want to think of it. But that's the one we're doing right now. We're not going to worry about the positive legs on these LEDs until later on. You can also go ahead and pop the LEDs down into the little areas that were holding the old bulb in place. The 3mm LEDs fit very nicely into those slots. We're going to want to remove this inductor that I have squared or boxed here from the board. I would recommend that you use low melt solder to remove this inductor. You can probably use hot air, but you're going to have to be very careful to not melt the plastic connector that's very close to this inductor. If you do, I'm using some low melt solder here, and it comes off fairly easily and I don't damage anything. So looking at the board this way, that bottom pad where the inductor was is where we're going to solder our resistor to. Okay, and then once you soldered one leg of the resistor down, you're going to want to go ahead and get a long piece of wire. I'm using 30 gauge Kynar wire. And I would recommend that you remove the insulation from the middle of the wire. I actually connect the middle of the wire to this resistor. Later on, each end of that wire is going to connect to a different LED bulb. A different LED bulb for the anode, to be more precise. Alright, and I'm just soldering down that wire in the center like I mentioned that I was going to. And once you do that, I would recommend you use some heat shrink tube to put over that exposed wire and the resistor. You don't want any unnecessary short circuits occurring. If you don't have heat shrink tubing, you can probably get away with just using some electrical tape. I have my hot air station at 100 degrees Celsius just to help shrink the heat shrink here. And this is what the resistor, wire, and heat shrink all look like when it's all said and done. Okay, at this point we're going to want to solder our ground wires that we've already connected to the LEDs to this board. Here's the ground point that I used. It is the same ground point that one of the original white wires was using. I would recommend you probably use it as well. And both of the ground wires I routed to this point and soldered there. Now for the wire that we soldered to the resistor, we're going to solder each end of that to an anode for a diode. And that's what I'm doing right here. Once you've done both of those, you can go ahead and reapply that white adhesive strip. So since the LED towards my right hand there wasn't really going under the light diffuser too much, I went ahead and put a small strip of aluminum tape there to hopefully help diffuse the light better. All right, and just have to get your wires routed decently and we're pretty much done here. So I'm just gonna go ahead and put this white plastic piece back over top of the diffuser here and then screw it back down. And this is what it looks like when it's all said and done. Now we can go ahead and reassemble the Nomad, then test it out. So we can go ahead and drop this diffuser down here, place the screen over top of it. Just lining up the diffuser with where it should go on the board here. We can then take this metal bracket and snap it back into place. All right, flip the board over. Go ahead and install those 4 Phillips head screws that are holding the diffuser onto the board. And we can connect the backlight board back to the main board here. Make sure you get this red plastic power switch thingamajig back on at this point. I always forget these. go ahead and line everything up and drop the board back into the shell. Alright, then you can reconnect both of these connectors, this one here, and then the speaker one over here. Now we can install the 3 Phillips head screws that hold this board into the shell. Okay, we need to insert this ribbon cable back into the connector here. Just take your time, make sure it gets in all the way, and once you get in all the way, lock those tabs back down. Sandwich the shell house back together. Then we can reinstall the 5 screws. Now we're ready to test. And when I tested it, worked great. First try. Brightness knob works as usual. Everything looks great. And that's going to just about do it for this one. In my opinion, it looks great. Looks about the same as it did with the old bulb, but we do have added benefits now, like I mentioned at the start of the video. And like I said, if you're interested in getting it done, check out the link in the description and I can go ahead and do this for you. With all that said, hope you learned something, hope this was informative, and have a good rest of your day.